Coogs House, the Houston Cougars down the horns in Austin, escape UT in overtime, and Jamal Shead is putting together that Conference Player of the Year case.
You are Locked On Coogs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater, kind of stop by, and there might be a few of those with those horns down or horns up or be offended at the horn sound kind of things stopping through tonight. Hit subscribe to let us know that you want to subscribe to the show to get the first thing in your morning, each and every morning. I'm butchering this through because I got a lot of things going on. We're going live here at Locked On Coogs, the first time in a long time. Had to get it live. It's going late tonight, and had to give you guys something to talk about with the Houston, I was going to say big win over UT Austin. I guess UT Austin is not ranked, 76-72. I remember we're doing a giveaway every 250 subscribers on YouTube. We are at 1950 something. So hit subscribe, help us get there. Like, comment on the video, let us know you're in the contest. We may give you away a sweatshirt like this or something to that effect. So hit subscribe, like, and comment on the video. If you just don't know what to say about this, you're not a basketball person, or you're just so dumbfounded by Jamal Shead's performance, tell us in the comments down below your pick for Super Bowl. All right, so today we're going to be looking at, obviously, the game that just happened. Houston knocks off Texas 76-72 in Austin in overtime, led by none other than Jamal Shead. The first segment will be all talking about him and his case for Conference Player of the Year, and I think he's making a pretty strong case for that. Second segment, I'm talking about the big men, the big men, some big-time love, because they had a very important impact on this basketball game. And last but not least, I do think there are some people out there worried about some things. And so I feel like we've got to talk about it. And so we'll talk at the end of the episode about some potential worries with this Houston Cougar roster. But let's start off with some happy thoughts. And that is Jamal Shead. Now, Jamal Shead, I should point out, is from Austin. He went to Manor High School. I think they said on the broadcast 11 times that like this is roughly 10 miles from his high school campus, the game they were playing at Moody Center. Maynard's got an interesting interaction with Austin, East Austin and UT Austin and downtown Austin, all have a bunch of different ways to interact with things. I'm sure Jamal could do a good job of explaining things more specifically. But I thought it was interesting in the postgame when asked about that, Jamal specifically said that Houston is home now. That's not to say that he has any, ill will towards his people in Manor or anything like that, the neighborhood in Austin. But he identifies with Houston, says Houston's home for me, about coming back to the city of Austin. Jamal led the way in this one with 25 points while battling foul trouble. He also, what's worth, kind of alternated between covering Max Amos and Hunter, for other two guards for Texas. Really did a great job on both ends in this game. I think the thing that makes him Conference Player of the Year is not necessarily his stats, 25 points per game. He's going to be averaging by the time this gets averaged in, close to 17, 18 points per game in Big 12 contests. I think the thing that makes him Conference Player of the Year, as we saw in the Texas game, is Houston's the number 4 team in the country. As far as the AP polls and stuff like that go, they're the best team in the Big 12. So they're the top team. And whenever that top team needs something done, guarding their best perimeter guy, getting a basket, getting someone set up, getting something done, the answer is only Jamal Shead, right? Now, the only thing I think you could hold against him was the questionable jump shot choice he had at the end of regulation. Kelvin Sampson spoke about that after the fact. He said that they drew a play to get Jamal switch on to Max Amos and then go downhill and to attack. Everything worked well on the play. Shead just pulled up for 3 instead of attacking the rim. The goal, I think, from Sampson was to get the shot off around that time. And so I think it sounds like Shead might have just seen the clock and it's time to get the shot off and not attacked. But Sampson wanted to get downhill, maybe get a putback if the shot missed off the rim or something on a contested layup. Obviously, instead, step back 3, airballed or whatever it was, not the greatest shot. That's about the only criticism you can offer. And truthfully, it was a low stakes buzzer beater in the sense that the game was tied. So it's not like Houston lost the game if he missed in making that decision. And I should point out again, number 4 team in America, top ranked AP and coaches poll team in the Big 12. And he's the number they're calling, right? I think he also, for what it's worth, spearheaded the biggest 3 possessions, at least the biggest 3 possession sequence in this season, and maybe the biggest 3 possession sequence in the Kelvin Sampson's run. Now, the way that went down was, I want to talk first. I thought I was going to talk a lot more about to open the half when he came out and found, I guess, first it was Sharp, and then it was Cryer in the corner for 3 on a very similar set where they kick out to the flare screen. But as important as those things felt at the time, what was actually the most important series was when Houston got down 6 and Jamal Shead came down and made a 3. Jamal Shead came out and made another 3. And then he set up on a hockey assist. He passed the ball to Roberts, and Roberts hit Sharp for another 3. Houston went from down 6 to up 3 with a 9-point run, entirely facilitated by Jamal Shead. The most important, again, this game was slipping away. Mediocre crowd, the Moody Center in Austin, was getting into it. They thought they had life. And instead, Jamal Shead said, no, we're not going anywhere. And 3 hockey assists for another one right back in this game. I just can't so many college basketball teams, so many good college basketball teams fold that up, right? You just won on Saturday, hard to win on the road in conference. Texas was shooting the ball pretty well at that point, kind of making their own little run. Just not our night. We just played 36 hours ago, whatever it was. We'll get ready for Kansas next Saturday. Jamal Shead said, no, that's not happening. We're going to go win this basketball game. Now, throughout this game, whenever it was time to make a play, the play becomes a glorified HB dive. And I say that for my Madden folks out there because it's Jamal Shead getting the ball in some form or fashion, going downhill, attacking the rim. And I'm telling you right now, if you put down the 2-handed dunk or an and one dunk, because he did get fouled and they didn't call it on the baseline against Dylan DeSue, that's a SportsCenter highlight for all SportsCenter highlights. That's going on all the posters, all the everything. That's Austin Kid on Austin Kid. Jamal Shead representing the University of Houston. That was an incredible almost play as well. Favorite play from some folks in the chat. We got Tugler's putback dunk, which is a great segue. You don't even know you're setting me up for that, Austin. A great segue. I do want to talk some about the big men and the big men's play in the second segment. But before we get to that second segment, Houston obviously wins this game. And if you want to win your own games, or if you want to watch significant games, or it feels like, anyway, Houston is everyone's Super Bowl, right? And it feels like that because they do all kinds of things like stripe the crowd in orange and white and do all kinds of crazy disrespectful signs, more so than the disrespectful hand sign. They have actual disrespectful signs there in Austin. But if you want to go watch the actual Super Bowl and make it a little more interesting, or you want to celebrate the Super Bowl like me, like I'm a big nerd Super Bowl. I sit at home with a bunch of snacks, no one talking to me. I want to focus on the game and the commercials at the same time. If you get weird about the Super Bowl, go to FanDuel.com and make it all the more interesting. Because right now, if you place a winning $5 bet, you get a $200 bonus bet back. So if you put down $5 and that $5 wins, you get $200 back in bonus bets. They got the Chiefs with a glorified Michael Jordan at quarterback as a 1.5-point dog. That seems utterly ridiculous. I'm telling you that's the line right now. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel. Make every moment more. Official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so I said, and Austin did a great job of segueing me to the second segment is going to be all about the big men because Jamal Shead started the show. Jamal Shead wins this basketball game. Houston does not win this game without Jamal Shead. But you also had important, distinct, different impacts from each of your 3 big forwards. Houston's unique in that they only have 3 traditional forwards. The rest of their guys are kind of bigger guards or perimeter guys. They only have 3 guys that play down near the basket with any regularity. And all 3 of them helped make important plays that led to Houston winning this basketball game. I should point out that the three of them had a combined 21 rebounds. Two, Javier and Jaywan, both had 8 rebounds apiece. Jojo Tugler comes off the bench, though, and has the highlight of the night with a big putback dunk. And I think that's going to make SportsCenter replays. I got SportsCenter happening on the TV right next to me. It looks like it's all over TV as the big play of the night from the big guys. I would point out that while that 2 points was important as well in any game, that 2 points can be really important. That perhaps as if not more impactful stuff he did was just tipping out loose balls and offensive rebounds to keep them alive. Used every inch of that 7-foot, 1,000 wingspan he's got going to kind of keep the ball out of the hands of Texas Longhorns and give Houston a chance. Energy, effort, pogo stick, all the different buzzwords you want to use on a Houston Cougar, Kelvin Sampson culture big man can get tied to Jojo Tugler. He made a dramatic impact on this game and it was frankly kind of a shorter run than I think people might have anticipated in this one. He played just 20 minutes, had his 5 rebounds. We don't keep track in our box scores of necessarily tips and deflections and things like that go out to Houston Cougars. I know that when they rewatch film in the Houston Cougar coach's office, they do, and they value those things, and you're seeing it play out in a guy like Jojo. But that's JoJo's impact off the bench. Javier Francis was limited in his impact. Played 26 minutes, had foul trouble, did foul out by the end of the game, had just 4 points. But 2 of those 4 points, I got to tell you, are 2 points that I never thought I would see Javier Francis get. And that's not because I don't like Francis. I actually really like Francis. In the handful of games I've gotten to look at in person, been a media member for in person, he's been weirdly on the player panel for the end of the game and multiple of them. He's a very nice person, a very gentle giant that plays very much the opposite. And playing very much the opposite kind of leads to a reckless abandon that ultimately makes it hard to calm down and make free throws sometimes. I mean, big guys have trouble with free throws for a number of different reasons, and that appears to be consistently one of them when they're more aggressive or they play with an aggression in their game. And then with just under 2 minutes to go, Jamal Shead is fouled on a jumper, and he misses a free throw. Javier Francis rebounds that free throw. First of all, impressive offensive rebound. But Kendall, I found out I'm pronouncing that kid's name wrong from Texas, Kendall Weaver, fouls Javier Francis thinking, okay, this dude's shooting less than 50% from the stripe. Last 2 minutes, this game is in Austin. Student section looks relatively full. Taking my bets there if I'm them, right? Again, Texas was up 2 at that point. They got to be thinking the most Francis makes is 1 free throw. Francis walked up the stripe and knocked down both. Now, I have to say, that was the moment we were going to win. And I will say when they fouled him, I was like, oh my God, how is this going to be what it comes down to? We're going to miss these free throws. They're going to come down and we're going to have to foul. And my mind was spinning. And then he made them both. And I was like, oh, it's just our night, right? Even with all the chaos and all the misses and all the other things, Francis knocking down those free throws. Again, he had just 4 points, but those 2 were so, so important. The other guy I want to talk some about, as far as obviously the big three big men are concerned, is going to be Jaywan Roberts. Jaywan had a number of different baskets you could point to that were at impactful moments. He had isolation plays, and I think, and this is probably the high school basketball coach in me, that it tells you something about the importance of Jaywan Roberts, that when they come out of a timeout, more often than not, they're running one of 2 different kind of sets, and they're getting one of 2 different kind of guys isolation. They're getting Shead downhill, or they're getting Jaywan Roberts going to his left hand. And frankly, Jaywan had a number of different key moments in this one where they isolated him on the block in important need a basket situations. He converted more times than not. He was a good scorer in this game. Finished with 14 points on 9 shots. I would argue that he probably should have gotten one of the 2 shots taken away and gotten some more free throws out of it, but I did appreciate the refs for the most part let him play. But the thing that he did to me that was impressive and gutsy and necessary was in a game where Houston, again, has 3 guys that are traditional bigs. Texas is a big team. You saw him on TV. They had Dessou and Mitchell and Shedrick, and they had a Brock Cunningham. They got a bunch of big old dudes, right? Houston, unfortunately, does not. That's just not the roster we got right now. It's not the cards we're dealt. And for what it's worth, the reason we can get away with this because guys like Jaywan Roberts can roll their ankles, take an elbow to the chin, play on a bum knee, do all those things because Jaywan Roberts did all those things, and still go on and get impactful rebounds, still play perimeter defense in a switch, still blitz the ball screen as a big man, still go after and tip balls, be horizontal at the ground, and you're diving for the loose ball. He made all these different kinds of plays with like the ultimate embodiment of Houston Cougar basketball culture, especially in the Kelvin Sampson era. But he did all those things while putting his body through utter hell. And just 2 days after doing it all against Kansas State, right? Like I cannot stress how impressive the performance was when also put in context, right? That Jaywan Roberts put together. I just like not very many people in the world can do that. I don't know what Jaywan Roberts' pro future holds. I don't know if it's in America and Europe. I don't know what position. That's not my gig. That's not my job. That's not what I do very well. I ask other people those kinds of questions, right? I do know that if you can do those things, you can play basketball for a long, long time because not very many people can, right? I should point out that Kelvin Sampson said had a more statistical way to look at the impact of the big men in this game. He said in the post-game press conference that Houston won this game on the offensive glass. Houston had 15 offensive rebounds. I think it's easy to look at the fact that they missed like 40, literally 40 shots and be like, okay, 15 offensive rebounds isn't actually that crazy high for Houston. That's like it's like a little bit more than a third, right? Like Houston, we aim for over 40, closer to 50 sometimes, right? So like this isn't that crazy. But when you look at how many offensive rebounds Houston got, 15, compared to what they held Texas to at 8. Again, Texas, for all the things they lack in shooting, and I know Amos and Horton can shoot, but they lack shooting a lot of other places, is a giant team. They held Texas to 8 offensive rebounds. That window in and of itself is an important window to look at in this game. Now, I don't know how you differentiate between the three guys. I've seen people on social media talk about, does Jojo Tugler need to start instead in front of Javier Francis? It seems like to me, whichever one of them gets more minutes also gets in foul trouble. So I don't know how you pick correctly there. What I do know is, well, I would always take another big guy in the roster. I don't want a different big guy in the roster. The three guys they got are really, really good and really, really talented and really, really important to what Houston does. As Hoffman says here in comments, culture win. This one made me laugh because I still think Nick Cody would be a great Houston Cougar one day. DeBoss 19, DeBoss 19 says, hopefully Nick Cody saw that. I agree. The kid's committed to Texas, and I think he made the wrong decision. He had an offer from Houston on the table. Houston culture wins. Tug is a stud. Javier, absolutely fantastic at rebounding as always. This game worries me for Saturday. We'll talk more about that in the third segment. You guys are good at segueing me in these things. But the third segment, I want to talk some about those worries because I think there are some reasons people have some worries, and there are some, very natural things. But it's not the only worry that you could have at this point because, frankly, we always come here to talk about sports. And sports can be a great escape. They're my ultimate escape. I love escaping through sports from real life. But sometimes real life is something you can't escape from. According to the FDA, pharmacies are running out of antibiotics like amoxicillin right in the middle of the worst flu season over a decade. And that can be really scary. I can imagine the helplessness if my 7-month-old, who's on a monitor right now, or my wife, or if anyone close to me was, getting sick and supply chain issues kept them from getting life-saving medication they need. But thankfully, we're going to be okay. We got the Jace Case from Jace Medical. A Jace Case is a pack of 5 different antibiotics to treat a long list of bacterial illnesses, respiratory infections, sinusitis, and skin infections, a bunch of other stuff, and all kinds of things that can happen to any of us. So you need to visit jacemedical.com and complete a physician encounter. It will be reviewed by a board-certified physician, and your medications get dispensed by a licensed pharmacy at a fraction of the regular cost. It's never been more important to be prepared than it is today. So go to jacemedical.com and use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, to get $20 off your first order. All right, so people in the chat, people online, people over looking at this game is like, man, breathing easy now that Houston won, but they also know Houston's got a really tough contest this Saturday in Lawrence, Kansas. And Kansas is probably more comparable to Houston than we might realize at this point. And frankly, it's nice to beat the Shorthorns in Austin, putting your horns down and all those kinds of things, right? But we also know that Kansas is a lot better than Texas. And there were parts of this game where Houston looked worn out. And I think that those concerns are interesting in that they don't bother me. And before I get to concerns that I think are more legitimate, Houston looked exhausted in this game, and Texas looked exhausted in this game, likely because they were. Both teams played Big 12 important games on Saturday just 2 days ago in a different city than this game happened in. Houston had to, after playing their game on Saturday, travel from Houston to Austin on Sunday. They practiced Sunday evening, I think was what someone told me, at UT's facility before then having shoot-arounds on Monday and so on away from home. Texas had an afternoon game in Provo, Utah to play BYU. We've seen how difficult that place can be to play on Saturday afternoon. They then traveled home Saturday night, got home late, and then had their own shoot-around and stuff on Saturday and on Sunday and Monday to get ready for this game. Both teams had difficult times in the last 48 hours, right? And so when they looked exhausted at the 11th hour on today in overtime and stuff like that, it's because they were. And I think that frankly, that's the kind of thing that I'm almost glad that Houston played a team that went through something similar in the last 48 hours, right? Let's say Texas hadn't played since Thursday. That would have made this a lot more difficult because they would have been a lot fresher, right? I think that that's actually an interesting way that this game went, was more even, more authentic to the actual result. That doesn't worry me going into this weekend necessarily. But I think the thing that people brought up that is a more legitimate worry is that we're having these moments, these spurts where offense is lacking, and it seems to be like LJ Cryer and Emanuel Sharp are falling on hard time shooting. They're going through slumps. And I mentioned in the sequence that might be the most important sequence of the season thus far, that Emanuel Sharp had a key three to end that and put Houston up 3. And it was a great shot. And they both opened up the half, making a 3 on the same flare screen action. They have had moments where they make shots. I mean, say they're going over, but we're used to seeing them go 3 of 8 and stuff like that in the course of a game, and they're going more like 1 of 8 or 2 of 9, right? And what's happening there in the course of the season, I am not worried in the macro sense for a couple reasons. One, they're still getting high quality looks. Houston is finding ways to get them open for 3 on either second chance efforts or quick hitting actions. I've just talked about it ad nauseum on this podcast, but Houston is good about running quick hitting actions as opposed to long form sets like Princeton or whatever. They do a good job of getting those guys open in actions. Cryer does a good job of pump faking, going off the bounce. I thought Emanuel in previous games did a better job of pump faking, getting to the rim than he did against Texas. But again, Texas has a lot of size at the rim, so maybe he thought they can work the ball around the perimeter and get a better shot. But they're getting solid looks. Long story short, getting solid looks. So that's the first thing that makes me not so concerned is they're good shooters. The slump will end. They're getting good looks. Focus on the process, right? The second thing is that as we saw with UT Austin, as we saw with Kansas State, and as I'm sure we'll see with Kansas, they're still drawing the respect for being legacy shooters. Defenses still treat them like you can't leave them alone from behind the arc. And frankly, to get other guys open, to get other parts of the offense open, That's as important as actually being hot from behind the arc, because that means when you have them both in, driving lanes open for Jamal Shead. That means when you have one of them open or one of them in, you can kind of run different actions and kind of assume that that defender won't come off and help because he can't leave, right? They're still getting that treatment. And since they're still getting that treatment, I think that the offense can still flow even if they're going through a little bit of a slump, as long as they can find other ways to put the ball in the basket as a team, right? The other thing that doesn't worry me so much about the two of them shooting the ball so poorly is, as we saw against Texas. Now, Texas scored more points on Houston than we've seen give up in a long time, right? But whenever it was important and timely, Houston was able to make a stop. Defense travels. Defense travels, frankly, better than shooting. Lighting in gyms can be different. Crowds can be different. Your perception of the basket with the backdrop and all those kinds of things can be a little different and wonky and whatever in the stanza, and how much light is in the gym if they black out the stadium or whatever, right? But defense will always travel. Being in the right space, rotating on the backside, helping the helper, monstering the post, those kinds of things travel. And Cryer and Sharp are engaged at a very high level and still able to help out the game in those ways, right? And again, since that travels, that strikes me as a little more important. I think that's going to be important for them to do moving forward. And frankly, I think it's going to be important for them to do when they're shooting or not shooting the ball very, very well. Now, in this game, Houston shot 33.3% from three exactly, 8 of 24, right? Houston's been shooting a little over 35, and frankly, before the recent slump, they were shooting closer to 37, 38. So we're seeing a little bit of a drop every game, it feels like. But they're getting those good looks. Cryer was 2 of 9 from behind the arc. He makes another 2 shots. We're talking about a great shooting day out of Cryer, right? He had great looks. That could have happened. Emanuel Sharp was 3 of 6 from behind the arc. I think that was a deceptive 3 of 6. I think most people would have assumed it was closer to 3 of 8 or 9, but it was just 3 of 6 from behind the arc. And I think those things will work out. I want to see Damian Dunn get hot from behind the arc. I want to see Ramon Walker go 1 or 2 from the corners a couple of times and kind of make himself a threat out there if he can, get on the floor a little bit longer because of that. So those are things I see with Houston's shooting that could work in the long term. I don't have an immediate concern that we're worried with the shooting. Now, Saturday, they go to Lawrence, Kansas. Saturday, Kansas is going to be tough. And I'm not going to beat around the bush and be, oh, no, screw those. No. It's a legendarily difficult place to play. It's a historic program. They've lost a couple games in the last month, but they've had a very strong roster for several years in a row. They were national champions just 2 years ago. Bill Self is a Hall of Fame coach. Kansas is going to be tough. I think Houston go up and win. I do. And I'm excited to talk about it for the next couple of days. Now, we'll try and fit a football episode in there somewhere. I'm sure football will have something that pops up. But I think that Houston can find a way to win that game on Saturday. I'm going to spend a few days talking about ways that happens. Y'all have been talking here, though. Chuck Wade, I think, brings up a good point. The Texas game, the TU game, was a much more emotional game for a lot of these kids than Kansas. Not just Jamal Shead being from Austin itself, but frankly, if you grow up in Texas, you kind of feel one of two ways about UT Austin. You either love them or you hate them. And if you're playing for Houston, it doesn't really matter which of those two you feel. You either went to Houston so your hate gets stronger, or you go to Houston so that love them flips, right? I think it's a fair way to look at that, Chuck. Good call there. Lorenzo points out if Cryer plays his game, Houston wins the national championship. Again, he's a big-time scorer. If Houston can add that kind of a score on a more regular basis, I think that's a fair point. That's the fun part about March. You got to get hot for 6 games. It's 3 weeks. It can happen to anybody. Down here, we got someone who is this. Richard points out Houston looked tired in the second half of the game. Luckily, I have a few days off for Kansas. I agree. I imagine they're heading back to Houston legitimately, probably as we speak. It's about midnight local time. Heading back to Houston as we speak, getting there whatever time in the morning they get there, and then sleep, take your rest, watch some film on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, get ready, Friday, go up to Kansas and have a shoot around practice when you get there. and get ready to go on Saturday. Saturday, the fun part about this is a national slate of big-time rivalry games across ESPN and all of college basketball. And Houston, Kansas is in the heart of it. Who would have thought? Like however many years ago, 2017. Like things are starting to turn around, and Corey Davis and Galen Robinson are having we got to go to backcourt. Like, hey, we're good at basketball again. This is awesome. And to think that it wouldn't be all that long until we're like playing on the biggest rivalry Saturday in college basketball. They picked the weekend between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl to like really showcase college basketball, to get people ready and excited for March. And Houston's on the marquee. That's so big time, folks. Now, all kinds of fun stuff to talk about this week with that Kansas game. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so you know we're live. Locked On Coogs is a Power Method Locked On Podcast Network. That means your team, our Coogs, not those down short horns every day. Go Coogs.